Okay, hello everyone, welcome to the lecture today, and today I prepared to show you one of my games. I played this a few years ago, and my opponent is Grandmaster Shabalov. He was a US champion 4 times, and I played the opening that I know the most. I played this opening for 24 years. It's a French defense, and so I will show you this game and explain you some of the opening ideas. And at the end I want to do also some endgame positions today with you. But first we'll go over this game. I played this game in 2003, so almost 10 years ago. And so Shabalov played e4 and I played e6. So if you're not familiar with the opening, as soon as you play e6, the name of the opening is French defense. It's one of the most popular defenses against e4, I would say. e4, there are probably 3 different defenses. e4, e5 is probably the most popular. Another one would be the Sicilian defense, and I think the next will be the French defense. So my opponent played d4, d5, and I played e5. Anybody familiar with this variation that he's playing? What's the name of this variation of the French defense? No? Okay, this is called advanced variation. There are 4 different lines white can play in this position. So here, if he plays e5, this will be the advanced variation. If he takes on d5, this will be exchange. If he plays knight d2, Tarrasch, named after a very strong chess player, Siegbert Tarrasch, and the next one is knight c3, the classical variation. Nowadays, if I play the French, I expect most people to play the knight c3 classical or to go to knight d2 line, Tarrasch. But in this game, Grandmaster Shabalov played e5, and he actually likes to play this. So when I'm playing against him, I kind of expect that he's going to play the advanced line because he likes to play this move against the French. Idea behind e5 is it's a very strong pawn here. It's actually controlling d6 and f6 square and makes it very difficult for me to develop the knight on f6. That's why I have to play c5 immediately and put as much pressure as possible on the d4 pawn. Because he moved his pawn twice, basically he lost a tempo in the opening. In fact, he gained some space, but he lost some time. So that's why I have to play very active and try to put as much pressure as possible on the d4 square, on the pawn. So he plays c3. Now I develop my knight. Actually, I start off with, I played queen b6 first. It's a transposition, putting pressure on d4, and also at the same time attacking the pawn on b2. So now, if he just decided to defend the pawn with bishop e3, it's going to be very bad because I can just simply capture the pawn. Even though it's not a good idea in the opening to develop the queen too early, according to the principles, but there are some exceptions, and this position is one of them. So you develop the queen a little bit early, but it's okay in this position. Now, he played knight f3, and I played bishop d7. The worst minor piece in this opening is the light square bishop for black. An idea behind this move is that I would like to play in some point bishop b5 and exchange this bad piece. In general, it's good for you to know that the worst piece is the light square bishop. So whenever you have a chance, if you're playing the French defense as black, you want to exchange this bishop for a bishop or even for a knight. It will be very good for you to exchange this bishop. So that's why I'm playing the bishop d7 here, trying to play bishop b5.
Question.
Yes.
The c3, is that to determine the best variation at that point? The c3 pawn for white, do you think that's considered the best?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if he doesn't play c3 in this position, I will simply capture the pawn on d4 next move, and then his e5 pawn, since this pawn is advanced, is not going to have a defense. It's going to be very difficult for him to defend. So that's why, yeah, I can go knight c6 after that, and the pawn will be weak. So that's why basically he plays c3 to protect the chain, basically, the e5 pawn. So I play queen b6, knight f3, bishop d7. Now my opponent played bishop d3, developing his light square bishop and preparing to castle. Before I play bishop b5 in this position, I first exchange on d4, and I was expecting him to take back with a pawn, because looks like this would be the logical response after playing c3. But in fact, he played knight takes d4 because he realized that I'm trying to play bishop b5. But now I cannot play bishop b5 because now he's controlling the square with his knight and a bishop. So he's playing against my idea of bishop b5. He wants to do everything he can to prevent me from exchanging the bishops. Very interesting, actually. Because if he takes back with a pawn, then I will play bishop b5, as I mentioned, to exchange the bishops. If he doesn't exchange, if he goes back to c2, after knight c6, actually he's going to be in trouble, because now his king will be stuck in the middle of the board because he cannot castle. So black will be better in this position. And if he takes, I can just take back, and again, black is fine here. So he played knight takes d4. Now it's going to be very difficult for me to play bishop b5 because he's controlling that square. But now, after he took with the knight, now his e5 pawn is a little bit weak. So I played knight c6, developing my knight, and immediately attacking the pawn on e5. So he doesn't have much choice in this position, because if he just castles, it's going to be very bad for him. I just take his central pawn. So he will lose the pawn. So he played knight takes c6. And now I have a question for you here. I want you to spend maybe a minute or two and think. And you can raise your hand, and I want to ask you, if you were playing this position with the black pieces, how are you going to recapture the knight here? Because you have three different ways you can capture this knight. With the pawn, with the bishop, or with the queen. What do you think is the best move here for black?
Definitely not the queen. The queen's already pawn.
Excellent. You don't want to take with the queen. Yeah.
Pawn structure versus the liberty of the bishop.
Very good. Definitely. Queen is out. We don't even want to consider that. But it's not easy because, you know, both moves seems like, I mean, they're both playable, in fact. But what do you think is the best move? Yes?
Well, I think the bishop takes is probably the best, because that maintains your idea of being able to try to trade off that bishop. It also gets your bishop out from behind the pawn chain. If you take it the pawn, now in order to get that makes the bishop even worse, because now you have to reroute it down back to the 8th rank and bring it out the other way.
Well, it's interesting, but the problem with taking with the bishop is he will play queen e2. He knows the threat, so he's going to develop his queen and, again, prevent me from playing bishop b5 because he's got now two pieces attacking on it. And another thing here, in the future, his knight is going to have an excellent square to go to on d4. So it will be a very good outpost for his knight to go on d4. And I don't have a pawn on c5 to move this knight. So that's why I decided to take with the pawn in this game. You can take with a bishop, but better is to take with a pawn.
Excuse me.
Yes.
C6 pawn recapture implies tactical advantage for black on the b file, which you could then reinforce quickly with great ease.
Absolutely. I could use the b file. Yes. I could use the b file later on also to put some pressure on the b2 pawn. But the most important thing, I want to play c5. And then I will control a lot of the central squares. And still, I'm going to have the opportunity to play bishop b5. In general, in the opening, at the early stage of the opening, it's a good idea to try to capture with the pawn towards the center. Okay? You want to capture and control as many central squares as you can. So that's why I took with the pawn. Now he castled. And now I play this move, f5. Who can tell me what's the idea behind this move? Because I talk about playing c5, and suddenly I kind of shifted and played f5 here. But what do you see? What's the idea behind this move? I'm trying to control, but there is something else I'm trying to do here. If you look at the position, which minor piece is the most active piece for white that he can try to use potentially to attack? Bishop. Bishop on d3, right? This is his best minor piece here, very active. So that's why I want to play f5. And now I give him a choice. Either he can take en passant, but then he's not going to have the strong pawn here controlling the f6 and d6 square. Or he's going to allow me to have a pawn on f5, which will shut down the bishop for the rest of the game. And he's not going to be able to threaten any attacking ideas along that diagonal. So with the pawn on f5, the bishop on d3, it's not as strong anymore. So let's take a look if he takes en passant. If he takes en passant, by the way, everybody familiar with the en passant rule?
Could you review that?
Yes, absolutely. So en passant. Basically, en passant only works if one player advances the pawn 2 squares from the original position. So once he plays this move, you can just capture the pawn here. It's like he played this move once. Same thing, if he plays this move, you can just take. The idea is basically this pawn is guarding the square. So when you advance the pawn to 2 squares, you can't really pass it. That's why he can take. That's the en passant. Now, if he takes this, in fact, I think black is already better. Because after I take knight f6, next move will be bishop d6, follow it up with castle, and then e5. And I think I have a very strong center. And my rook on f8 also going to be developed, which will give me some lead in development as well. And a very strong position for black. And at the meantime, as you can see, all these pieces on the queen side are not developed yet. And I will have the control of the center. So that's why I was, of course, hoping he would take, but I knew that it's not really likely he's going to take en passant. So he played c4. Now he's putting pressure on d5. If he didn't play this move, for example, he would play like knight d2, just a developing move, then I can simply play c5. And now I really have the control of most of the squares here.
Were you all worried about a queen check?
No, I'm not really worried about the queen check because I will just play g6 and now white will have to move the queen again.
Right.
It doesn't really accomplish that much. I mean, it may seem like it's weakening a little bit, but in fact it's not weakening that much. Tempos are more important in this position than just this idea. Some positions you can play this, but this position is kind of closed, so that's why it's not really too much. So the reason he played c4 now, because I cannot play c5, because this will be very dangerous because he will take and my center will be very weak now. See, my d5 pawn is weak. So that's why I cannot play c5 now. So I played knight e7, developing my knight. Knight c3. Knight is going to g6. Now putting pressure on e5 pawn. Now I would like to develop my bishop and castle. After I do that, I have a very nice position here. I might be actually slightly better here. The b file is very important actually, because in this position my queen is already putting pressure on b2, and also I could use the rook b8 idea. Remember, if you see a half open file or open file, you always want to put the rook on that file. In this position, this is a half open file because there is a pawn on b2. If white didn't have a pawn on b2, this would have been an open file. And now my opponent played bishop e3, attacking on the queen. Now, black to play. Can you find the best move in this position? He didn't blunder a piece. It may seem like I can just play d4, right, and it will be a fork. But he didn't blunder. There is something behind it. Well, if you capture the b pawn, usually when your king is in the middle of the board and you're behind in development, it's very risky to capture a pawn because that will further delay the development. It's like a general rule. And in this position, white is very well developed already here. So I'm kind of behind in development. So I wouldn't want to take this pawn. Even if there is, I'm not losing or anything immediately, it's just very risky, because I should think about just developing these pieces and castle. But also I don't want to just move my queen, because then I just lose a tempo. Can I play bishop c5? Get forked. How? Bishop c5 loses. Yeah, you should know this move. If you play bishop c5, then you always have to look for this move, knight a4, forking the queen and a bishop. And now I'm losing a piece. So you have to be very careful. You have to always have to look. Even though we know the knights, they're not strong on the side of the board, but sometimes there are some strong moves like this. And now I will lose a piece. So I cannot play bishop c5. What else I can do here? Well, if you play pawn c5, the problem with this move is he just takes. And then now my center is very loose. And I'm losing a pawn, actually. So I don't want to play c5 yet. What about the most natural move here? Did you look at that move? When you see two pieces like this, right? What's the first move you have to look? d4, right? Because you're forking two pieces. When you're attacking two pieces at the same time, that's a fork. Now, he plays knight a4, and looks like I have to move my queen, and he's going to capture on d4. Because if I just move my queen away, he's going to capture. But I have a very nice move here. In fact, it's like a small combination here. What can I do here?
Queen b4. No, you can take the pawn, no?
Well, queen is hanging. This pawn I can't take. Knight is protected. So queen b4, you're close. You're very close. But you have something even better than that. Because when you go queen b4, he's going to go bishop d2. Attacking your queen. There's a better square for the queen to go to. Queen a5, but do you see what's the idea behind it? If you play queen a5 and if he takes the pawn, so queen a5, that's right. But now if he takes the pawn, this move loses actually for him. Do you see what I can do? Well, I can't take yet because queen is protecting it. You push the pawn to c5 first, and now he loses a piece because now I'm attacking two pieces at the same time. So it's a little tactical idea. If I didn't have this idea, I would just lose a pawn. Then I couldn't play d4. So it's very important that I have this move c5, because this really changes the evaluation of the position. Now black is better. If I didn't have this, I would be just worse, because I would have to move my queen back again. Like imagine if I didn't have d4 here, I have to move my queen back, and then I'm still not developed. And my king is in the middle of the board. So queen a5, now he cannot take. Again, let's take a look again why. c5, now attacking the bishop and the knight at the same time. And now he loses a piece. So he played bishop d2, attacking my queen. And now what's the best move? You always have to look at the whole board, right? Absolutely. Now, that's the difference why I want to go queen a5, then not queen b4, for example, because now I can take the pawn on e5 with the queen. I'm up a pawn, but it's not so easy, because now he still has the lead in development. But this e5 pawn is very important, because if I can consolidate my position, finish my development, then I have a very strong center. But now he's going to get some tempos. Rook e1 attacking on the queen. When he makes a move attacking your piece, he wins a tempo. And tempos are very important in chess. Sometimes you could be up material, but if you lose a lot of tempos, you could be in trouble. So here I have to be very careful. I go queen f6. Now I would like to play c5 in this position to strengthen the d4 pawn and open the diagonal for my bishop, but of course he plays the move first. Now he stops me from playing c5. Bishop e7, developing. If I can just castle now, I will have a very nice position. But he plays now queen b3. And now if I castle, he has a very unpleasant move, queen b7. Attacking, activating his queen, attacking on the bishop. And strangely enough, I don't have a good way to defend this piece. Because if I try to defend it with a rook, for example, he plays bishop a5. So I cannot do that. And also this bishop is important because protects the c6 pawn. So I cannot castle because after queen b7 I might be in trouble here. The reason also I choose this game to show you because the next couple of moves are going to be very unusual, and you probably haven't seen that many games when one player develops his pieces first and then he brings the pieces back. So it's here very important for me to stop him from playing queen b7, and I have only one way. Only one way to stop him from doing that. How can you stop him from playing queen b7? Absolutely. Now I bring the bishop back. Now he cannot enter to b7. f4. Good move again. Now he fixed my pawn on e6 because I was thinking of advancing it, but now I can't because now he is controlling the square. And I cannot open the position here because my king is in the middle of the board. Now my bishop on e7 is very passive. Now I bring the other bishop to d8. Now most of my pieces are on the last rank here. But now I'm planning to activate this bishop by putting it to c7. Bishop c4. Now he's increasing the pressure on e6. Now he has three pieces attacking. Rook, bishop, and queen. I play king f7. See, I didn't even castle in this game because I need to protect this pawn. Now he plays rook e2. He's trying to double up his rooks on the e file. I play rook e8. And now he played rook a1. If you look at this position, it looks like white should be better, even though he's down a pawn, because he's got so much pressure on e6. And my pieces are passive here, and it's not so clear how I can untangle here. But first I play bishop c7, activating the dark square bishop. Bishop was very passive on e7 a couple of moves ago. So by doing this maneuver, bishop d8, bishop c7, now I activated my bishop. And also now I'm preparing this e5 break here. But first now he needs to protect f4 pawn because I have two pieces attacking on it. So he brings the queen to f3, protecting and also attacking on c6. I play bishop d7. Now he plays b4. Now, if I allow him, this knight is misplaced for him. If I allow him to play knight b2, knight d3, then white will be better here. So if I play some slow moves, try to go king g8, king h8, just for safety of my king, he will put his knight on d3, and then he will continue with a4, b5 ideas, and every piece he has will be very nice nicely placed. So this knight is misplaced here. And I have to play very energetically here, because if I don't play e5 here, I will be in trouble. So what can you do here so you can play e5? Because you can't play right away because the bishop is pinning. Yes.
Maybe work your knight over there?
Knight where on d5?
Yeah, try to block the check on your king.
Well, if I go knight e6, knight e7, he might even capture on e6, because I block my rook. I have to be very quick here. As I mentioned, if he plays knight b2, knight d3, it will be very difficult for me to play e5. If I manage to play, attack his bishop.
Yeah.
How? Which move?
Oh, pawn.
a5?
What about attacking the knight with the bishop?
Attacking this
Well,
knight?
then he could, no, then he could take
No.
the bishop to the white.
Can't do that yet. Try to play e5. You need to make one strong move and then play e5. When you play e5, all your pieces will be very well placed now. All the bishops will be open, the knight, all the pieces will come into the game.
You must have to move your king.
Absolutely. King f8. I don't have time to go king g8, king h8 to play safe, because he will have time to put his knight on d3. Now I'm ready to play e5. He realizes I'm threatening to play e5 right away, and then I will have a very nice position, because this is my backward pawn. I will get rid of this pawn, and then I will threaten to play also e4. Then I'll have two protected pass pawns. So he played b5, advancing this pawn, and now e5. I also protect the c6 pawn here with my queen. So it's a very good timing to play e5, because he was trying to take the pawn on c6, but after I did this, now if he captures on c6, I can just simply play bishop c6, and white is in big trouble. Queen is hanging, knight is hanging. This piece is really misplaced here. Now, let's say he will go here, and I'll just push. When you have two protected pass pawns like this in the middle of the board, this is just winning. He cannot do anything now. So he didn't allow me this. So he played. Now he's in trouble. The reason e5 is very strong, because simple capture like f takes e5 loses to knight takes e5, because my knight now comes into the game. And now with the tempo, attacking the queen and a bishop. That's why I was really trying to play this move e5, because I realized once I play e5, I might be just winning. So he's in big trouble now. So he played b6, attacking my bishop. Now, what do you want to do now? Here you have a chance to get attack the queen. Absolutely. Now you have very strong pass pawns. Now, also his rooks are now ineffective, because before they were putting pressure on this weak pawn. They were constantly threatening to take. But after I play e5, e4, he's not going to take the pawn. He's not going to lose a rook for 2 pawns. So now he has to move his queen. And now I also play this move with the tempo again to move his queen away. He plays queen h5. Now I have to do something here. My bishop is hanging. I capture. And now I'm also attacking his knight. So now he brings his knight into the game. Very strong. Now knight is very strong, because it's putting pressure on the bishop, on a rook. So I simply took. And he has a pawn too. Strong pawn on b6. And now When opponent has two bishops, usually it's a good idea to exchange one of the bishops because it's an advantage to have two bishops. In particular, this position now, he's threatening very strong move bishop b4 check, and my king is in trouble. And if you remember, I mentioned the worst minor piece for black in this opening is light square bishop, right? So that's why I play bishop e6 here. Exchanging the strong bishop he has, and also, again, get rid of my worst piece. He takes. I take back with the rook. And now he pushes his pawn, a4. He also has some dangerous pawns on the queen side, but my pawns are stronger. First I went king g8 to protect. He pushed a5, and now I go e5. The difference is I have 3 pawns, and he has only 2. And usually when the pawns are in the center, they're stronger because they control more squares. And after I play c5, now my pieces are putting some pressure on b6, so he can't really push his pawns now. And now I'm planning to play c4, c3, d3, and basically round down. So he goes rook c1, putting pressure on c5 pawn. Now e3. Not only am I attacking on the bishop, I'm also threatening now to capture on f4 because the bishop on d2 was protecting it. But after this move, if he moves the bishop, I can just simply capture on f4, forking the queen and the rook. So he can't just move the bishop because he will just lose immediately. Knight f4, attacking the queen. Again, this is a fork. When you're attacking two pieces at the same time, it's a fork. And you take only 2. Now I'm up exchange. So this is just losing right away. So now he plays queen f3. You have to be careful. See, he leaves his bishop hanging, but he plays queen f3, threatening to take my rook. I could move my rook in this position, but I have a better move. And I want to see if you can find it. What's the best move here for black? Excellent, rook e4. Not only you stopped his threat, you basically blocked his queen now on f3. Now the queen is going to be out of the game. And now I'm also attacking the pawn on f4. It's a very strong move, rook e4. His bishop is still hanging. If he moves the bishop, then I can take the pawn on f4. So he took the pawn on c5. I could take his bishop, probably winning also. But first I would like to get my knight into the game. So I take the f4 pawn, attacking the rook on e2. Now he plays b7, attacking my rook. Now I have many squares to go to, but usually you want to bring the rook to f8 in this kind of positions because king is protecting the rook. In case of a move rook c8, your rook will be protected. Now he plays rook c8. It looks a little bit scary, but I actually calculated that I'm winning this because now it looks like he's going to queen too. Now I take some material. So I take the rook first with the check. He takes. I take the bishop. Queen takes. Now I'm up a rook. Clearly up a rook, but this pawn is very dangerous. Now I'm going to allow him actually to promote this pawn into a queen. But I will win his rook. So in fact he's going to have 2 queens on the board. So what's the best move here for black? Because he's threatening now to play b8 queen. Queen a6, you have to be very careful because he could... Queen a6 he could actually take on f8. He could take on f8 and play b8. So I think I have to play this move because it's my only move. rook back to e8. Because if he captures, I will just take back with the rook, preventing him from playing b8. So now he has no choice but to play b8 queen. But then I take his rook. Now he has two queens on the board, but I have two rooks and a pawn, extra pawn here, because I have 4 pawns and he has 3. In fact, now black is just winning here. So he played queen b3 check, king h8. Another very important factor is my king is very safe. Two queens are very strong when they can create threats. Against the open king, they're very dangerous, but when my king is very safe like this, they're kind of ineffective. So he plays queen a4, trying to win the pawn on d4. So I play rook f d8, bring my rook into the game. He played a6, and I played d3. And I realize I'm probably winning here, but I definitely didn't expect him to resign in this position. And this is the first time that my opponent resigned with 2 queens on the board. But if we look at this a little bit more, we try to analyze, we will see that, of course, Grandmaster Shabalov realized he's just completely lost. If he see a chance, he would probably play on. Okay, let's see. Now, I would like to set up one position for you, endgame. Okay. You're playing this position with the white pieces. It's the same color bishop endgame. And now white king is under a check. And you need to decide where do you want to go with this king. If you go to the wrong square, you're not going to win this game. And if you go to the right square, you're going to win. So basically, you need to choose between king e8 or king g8. But there is a reason why. One move is winning, and another one is a draw.
The king toward the center square.
King toward center. Okay. Anybody else? It's very logical. But there is a rule in the bishop endgame. When you see the opponent, let's say if you go here, right? Then his bishop is going to be on a long diagonal. Okay? So then he will go here. And we're going to have a hard time moving this bishop from this diagonal. Because if we go check, he goes here. The general rule is, if you have a passed pawn and you're about to queen, you want to try to drive his bishop from the long diagonal to the short diagonal. The short diagonal is this diagonal here, that he can control to stop you from promoting the pawn. If you keep him on a long diagonal, you're not going to be able to win this game. So that's why, in this position, the best move is actually king g8. Now, let's see how we can move this bishop from a3, from the long diagonal, to the short diagonal. First step is to do that. There are a few steps you need to make to win this endgame. You're not just going to be able to win because you have a passed pawn on a 7th rank. Because if you just queen this pawn, he's going to sacrifice the bishop. It will be a draw. Now, how can you move this bishop from a3? Let's see if you can find the first step. How can we do that? Well, you have to make sure you protect your pawn, yeah? I'll take it. So you have to protect the pawn.
Bishop c3.
Bishop c3, very good. So let's say I play this one, bishop c3, I go bishop a3. Now what do we do to move the bishop from this diagonal?
Bishop to, is that G7?
Bishop g7, correct. Bishop b4.
And
Bishop f8. So now we move the bishop from the diagonal, because if he's going to exchange, you're going to take, and then you're going to step any direction and promote the pawn. Then you're going to checkmate him with the queen. So he has to move the bishop, and he's going to go to d2 because just in case he cannot get on the long diagonal, he wants to put the bishop on a short diagonal. So now you move the bishop back and threatening to queen. Once you queen, you're going to win the game. You can checkmate him easily. So he has to go bishop h6. Now, when the bishop is on a short diagonal, he has less squares to go to go and also to control the f8 square. Now, you can do something with this bishop to deflect him away, so you can promote this pawn into a queen.
Attack with the bishop.
Attack with the bishop from here, right? If he takes, then you promote the pawn. You can win this easily with the king and queen versus the bishop. So he has to play, the only move is bishop g7. And now, what is the winning move here? The move after which black is going to resign. There are probably few ways to win, but this move will probably end the game immediately. Yes?
It's more of a zugzwang at this point.
Absolutely. That wins too. The bishop d2 wins too, but something a little bit better. It's a winning, but put him into a complete zugzwang.
Right next to the king.
Bishop g5. Now, complete zugzwang for black. Now, bishop cannot move any square now. You're going to take and promote. King cannot move anywhere because you take the bishop. So now he has to take. Zugzwang, no moves for black now. You run out of moves here. So he's going to take your bishop. You're going to take the bishop and promote the pawn into a queen. Okay? So the rule, very important rule to know, in a same color bishop endgame, that you always want to drive the bishop from the long diagonal to the short diagonal. There are many examples I can show you where you do this, and you win the game. But if you would have played king e8 here, see, the reason this is not helping you because you're not controlling any squares on the short diagonal. I mean, you're controlling the f8, but you're not controlling the g7 square. But when you play king g8, you control the square on a diagonal. Two squares you control with the king, and the third one you're going to control with the bishop. So that's why you can win this game. Okay? Okay. Now I'm going to set up another position. It's more difficult than this one. Okay? It's a very important position. And you'll see that it's same type of idea, but it's a little bit more difficult to win because black has more defensive ideas here. Now, in this position, it's similar to the previous example, but the only thing is black has extra defense here. So here, white is going to win this game if he plays the right way. But right now, you cannot promote this pawn because he will take with the bishop. So the first step, what is the first step that we learned from the previous example?
Drive the bishop to the short diagonal.
Short diagonal. Where is the short diagonal here?
H5, HG.
No, a short diagonal that he can control the b8 square.
A7, B8.
Okay? That's the short diagonal. This is the long diagonal, right? These are the two diagonals that he can use to control the b8 square. If you drive the bishop away from the diagonal, you're going to win this game because you're going to promote the pawn. Even if you lose your bishop, you promote the pawn into a queen, you're going to win. So let's try to see how we can try to do that. How can we drive the bishop from the long diagonal to the short diagonal? This is going to be a really short diagonal because only two squares, just one square here on a7. So what's the first step in this position for white? Okay, move the bishop. Where? Where can we move this bishop? We have to move the bishop, yes? Try to use the same way you did in the previous example, remember? To move the bishop from a long diagonal, you have to put your bishop to the same diagonal. So you have to bring this bishop to h4. Let's say I play this move. This is not the best defense. I will show you the best defense after this line. So we go here, right? So we bring the bishop to the long diagonal, correct? That's the only way to do it. You have to always have to look at the whole squares, you know, the entire board, because this is the only way you can bring this bishop to the long diagonal. Now you go here. In order to move the bishop from the long diagonal, you have to put your own bishop on that diagonal. So now he moves the bishop. We move the bishop back. Now we're threatening to queen. He cannot come here to this diagonal because we take. So he goes back here, and now if he goes here, now we're just going to deflect the bishop with bishop g1, and white wins. Because he takes the bishop, you queen, the b pawn. You cannot go here because you just take. But now, as I mentioned, there is a better defense here. When you play bishop h4, you're planning to go bishop c7 and bishop a7 here. He's going to realize that. So he's going to play king b6. So when you play bishop f2 check, he's going to go king a6. And he's not going to allow you to get your bishop to the long diagonal. Now you're going to win this game by gaining a tempo, very valuable tempo. See, this is the original position. If you reach this position with black to play, you can win this. So that's why we're going to try to do that here. After we go here, he goes king b6. Now, what can we do here to gain that one tempo? We want his bishop to be on a different square when we reach the original position. We want this bishop to be on g3 or different square. Well, if you go here, then I'm not going to take. I'm going to go here. See, I'm on a long diagonal, so you can't really deflect me away by just attacking me because I have too many squares to go to with the bishop. I will stay on this diagonal. Okay, so we go back here. I can't go to here, right? Because he will just take me. So this is not going to work. So I go back to c5. Now he can move the king, because once he moves the king, then I can go bishop a7. Let's say if he comes here to attack my bishop, I go here. Then I win because of putting my bishop to the long diagonal. So now he moves the bishop. Now he's forced to move the bishop. Now I go bishop back here. Now I'm threatening to go bishop d8 and bishop c7. Now he needs to stop that threat, so he's going to go back with the king to b6. And now you're going to go check. Did you realize that we reached the same position that I set it up for you? The only one difference, his bishop is now on g3. And that small difference, it makes a big change here. You will win now, because you gain a tempo. Because now you're going to be able to get your bishop to the long diagonal, because you can use that tempo. Which tempo I'm talking about? Again, we want to bring the bishop to b8, yeah?
Attack his bishop.
Excellent.
But you attack the bishop.
Bishop h4. So we do the same idea, but we gain a tempo because now he needs to move the bishop. He doesn't have time to play king b6, king a6. And he cannot take the bishop because you queen. So he has to move the bishop. And then what do you do?
Then we go around the horn.
Bishop f2. See? Now we're going to get there. We're going to get to a7 and b8. So because he can't do anything. So he has to go bishop f4, bishop a7, bishop b8, bishop f4, threatening to queen, bishop a7, bishop e3. White wins. So that one tempo, what the, bishop on h2, it's more difficult to win. But once you force the bishop on g3, let's do this again one more time so you can see how this works. So you start with bishop h4, threatening to go bishop f2 and bishop a7. So he has to bring his king to a6. This is the best defense. You check. King a6. Bishop c. Yeah, this is not going to help. So we're going to go bishop c5. Now I place bishop g3. So now we go back with the bishop because we want to go bishop d8, bishop c7. Just cover the long diagonal. So he cannot allow us to do that because now we just play here, bishop here, just bishop c7. And after the exchange of the bishops, you promote the pawn. So he has to play king b6. Now you play check. See here, original position, but the bishop is on g3, not on h2. And that gives us the extra tempo. Bishop h4. We attack the bishop. He cannot capture because we queen. So he has to go back.
Why wouldn't the king go back to the original position?
Black king.
Yeah.
Because now it's under a check. If he doesn't go there, then as the arrows are showing, we bring the bishop here. And then he can no longer stay on this diagonal. And we promote the pawn into a queen. So he needs to bring the king back to c6 to stop that idea. But the king cannot be at two places at the same time. So that's why now he has to do that. And now we gain this tempo, bishop h4. And you will win the game. And the final idea, you put him on the short diagonal and deflect by sacrificing your bishop. Excellent. Any questions about this? Bishop endgame? Same color bishop endgame? Most important idea to remember is that you want to drive the bishop from the long diagonal to the short diagonal and then try to deflect it. There are more endgame positions, and next week I will be here. We will work on some more endgame positions like this. Okay? Okay. Thank you all for coming.